Hey there, great to be with you today. Before we begin, I know that sometimes these conferences feel a little bit like you're drinking out of a fire hose. So to help you avoid the pressure of getting everything down in your notes, we're making the presentation files and a couple of other resources available for download at simply.butler.church. That way you can just sit back, enjoy the content we'll go through without stressing out about missing anything. And then you can go back and download the PDF files at your leisure. So just go to simply.butler.church. Okay, let's get started with today's presentation of how to build a social media content calendar with my chips and dip framework. Ready? Today, more than ever, we are a digital nation. So I just want to talk a little bit about that. If you just look at the numbers, it's plain and clear that we are living online more and more every day. There are more than 70 million photos posted to Instagram right now. And no, they're not all food pics. And 4 billion pieces of content have been posted to Facebook at this point. There are more than 4 billion searches on Google. And we're talking almost 900 million tweets in the Twitterverse. We are driven to consume and share virtually and visually with one another on Twitter, Google, Instagram, and Facebook. It's what we call today a TGIF world. And I think it's time, and I think we're ready, to introduce everyone to a TGIF gospel. And if you approach it well, I think your church has this opportunity to be a part of the conversation that's out there in the social and digital platforms. Well, my name is Kenny Jang, and today I'd like to share with you a little bit about building a dynamic social media content calendar for your church and your community online that's strategic and effective. So the first thing is, do you realize that teens today are spending more than 6.5 hours per day on social media? And 81% of Christian millennials have posted scripture to their social media networks in the past year. People out there in your community, they're not disengaged with religion. We're just not talking their language. And so today as church communicators, we're challenged to build content strategies of meeting people exactly where they are, where they're already engaging with their friends and family and coworkers, and where they're already sharing and living out their entire lives. Like the foundation of any good party, I always like to say, you bring the chips, I'll bring the dip. And in the spirit of a certain pastor, Rick, you might know, who does these acrobats with acronyms, let's take a closer look at the word chips and dip to reveal what I really mean are the key ingredients for socializing across today's digital platforms for your church and ministry organization. So let's start with what you're bringing to the party, the dip, D-I-P. And the first ingredient is critical. D in the dip stands for discipline. With discipline comes consistency, and that means consistency of publishing. Consistency of publishing. And by that I mean the outcomes of consistency of presence, right? You'll be out there. And just as important, if your workflows reflect a consistent publishing rhythm, you'll find that you'll be forced. You'll be forced to bring clarity to your communications. You'll remove clutter and confusion from people's minds as they engage in your content, as they come across your brand. And they'll understand better who your church is and what you stand for. People who come across your content will quickly begin to understand your voice as you bring a unified persona and messaging online if you bring discipline to your communications. And so discipline is a fundamental, foundational, critical ingredient in your social media strategy. Second, the I. I stands for insights. There's enough fluff on the interwebs, right? With banner ad blindness, and now we have like increasingly high doses of social media meh, right? What people want when they engage with your brand, with your church, is meaningful, thoughtful content. They want your insights, and that's where the I comes in. Your commentary, your real thoughts. As we say at our church, one of the perspectives of the Bible is that truth is relevant. And social media is a great place to help those in your digital ecosystem to better understand what you mean by that. And I'm talking about sharing insights that might be about faith and work, how they live out their lives Monday through Saturday when they're away from your church building, right? Or reflections that help people in crisis where they are, or teaching content that helps people see the sacred in the secular. This is a place also to augment Sunday's sermons with further insights that people can process on their own throughout the week. People are bored. I'm telling you, they're bored of corporate and brand messaging that's stale, that's trite, that's predictable. And it's time you put yourself out there with the insights that are driven with intention for your social media strategy. Okay, lastly, in the DIP framework is P. P is for personality. One thing that we find many teams doing as I coach them is that they feel like when they're publishing to their church's organization's social channels, all of a sudden they need to take on this like official persona, right? Something that's stately or formal or distant or impersonal, and then all of a sudden boring. In fact, I'm sure you can reflect back to some of the brand pages that you see on Facebook or Twitter, etc., and have no clue who's behind the wheel. We call this the invisible person personality disorder. Let me ask you this. If you go to a cocktail party and you meet some new people, would you like to be introduced to someone behind a curtain and spend the rest of the evening with that person, but they never come back out from behind the curtain? Like, how likely are you going to return to them after you go get a drink from the punch bowl? Not likely, right? So my question to you is, what are you doing subjecting your people to the same experience with social interactions from your organization where you're invisible? So I'd like to challenge you to try coming out from behind that curtain and putting on a face to that organization's social messaging. Bring out a personality. It's okay. They want it. After all, people have relationships with people, not institutions. Let me say that again because it's important. People have relationships with people, not institutions. Hopefully that all makes sense. Remember now, we're relying on you representing your church to bring the dip to the party. Okay, DIP, that's a great framework, right? Now let's go for the chips. These are things that your audience and conversation partners bring to the table if you did your job to set the stage well. These are signs of healthy social engagement. That's what CHIPS is all about. All of them are great objectives for your social media strategy. So let's go through these one by one now, right? CHIPS. Okay, first is C is for comments. We all love interaction with our posts. You have to note that the majority of social media users are lurkers, right? Think of your own behavior each time you log on to a social media platform. Think of the last time, think about this for a moment for real, the last time you logged onto Facebook. What's the ratio of posts that you personally interacted with, like, share, comment, etc.? How many of those posts do you actually do that or even repost, right? That's the ultimate, is sharing them. How many posts do you actually do that versus those that you just scroll on by? You actually consume and just scroll on by. It's a very low percentage of interaction. Most of us are lurkers. When we have healthy social engagement with our audience, you'll begin to see commenting flow. Consistent commenting activities, real engagement with your church online that can translate to real interactions and visits to your church offline. So you want to publish with the approach that you have content out there that just begs for commenting, and you need to be strategic about that. You really need to think about how you are positioning and how you're presenting your content. Okay, next, H is for helping people peer-to-peer. When you set up the right dynamics of your presence for your audience online, people identify with your tribe, and best case scenario, they begin to treat it as community. Right? If you really provide consistent and meaningful content and you let your people see your online persona and personality come out, you'll eventually see a turning of the tide to where people will start to jump in and respond to each other in addition to or even before you have a chance to do so yourself from your church's account. That's the holy grail of community building. When you see peer-to-peer conversations, commenting, interactions, encouragement for each other, all without the necessity for you to jump in. Okay, next, I is for inspiration. Instead of producing content in a vacuum, I'm challenging you. It's better to listen to the ecosystem and take the content cues from them. If you respect your conversation partners, what you'll find is that you'll begin to discover plenty of inspiration to produce relevant content that's meaningful for both you and your tribe. You have to remember that it's not all about you. It's more like a Venn diagram, right? So think of it like this one big circle, things that are of interest to your audience, and then there's another circle that's filled with things that are of priority to you and your church. There's going to be a sliver of overlap. Sometimes it's big and huge, but sometimes it's just that. It's just a sliver. But what's really important is that you figure out how to publish content that's a win-win inside the overlap of the two circles. The best way is to build into your workflow ways to act as a listening post. You want to see what's recurring themes in content and commenting and responses. What are they sharing? What are they actually reacting to? You might host a survey or a poll periodically. Really, you're trying to figure out what's important to them so that you can pursue the best inspiration for the best content for your editorial calendar. Okay, lastly, we're going to move toward the P for permission. We are no longer in an interruption economy, but rather I think we're in an attention economy. Whoever has permission to show up in your inbox or your social feeds wins. This is critical, right? You want to continue to feed your guests so they keep coming back for more. You want them to give you permission to keep coming back to them over and over and over. A great book everyone involved with social media today needs to take in is by Gary Vaynerchuk. All his books are great, but his latest is called Jab, 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 Right Hook. Uses the boxing metaphor. And to reduce it down to a Cliff Notes version, you need to really serve your audience unselfishly, right? Jab, jab, jab. Serve your audience unselfishly 3 times for every right hook you throw out there. And the right hook stands for a call to action. So a call to action is something that you want them to serve you and your church. So jab, 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 right hook. Jab, 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 give, give, give. And only then do you have permission to ask, right hook, for something back from your audience. When you avoid the organizational instinct to talk about me, and some more me, your audience will start to give you permission to build a relationship that is about give and take. Okay, one last one is S. S is for sharing. The ultimate compliment for your content, right? When you bring the ultimate dip, people take it all in. And then they say to themselves, wow, this is so fantastical that I have to share it with my friend, my family, my coworkers, my network. Because why? Because it actually makes them look good. You want people sharing. So remember, jab, 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 give, 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 and they will reward you at the end by sharing, sharing, sharing. Okay, there you have it. Chips and dip. C-H-I-P, D-I-P. When you have the perfect chips and dip, you have the perfect party. But what exactly is the recipe? What's the actual details? So just how do you get there, right? Luckily, I've got my grandma's secret recipe for the fantastical 7-layer social media dip. Remember, you want dependability in content publishing that's consistent and always available for engagement, full of insights and personality. So think about it. Have you ever brought a 7-layer dip to a party? It's a crowd pleaser because there's something in it for everyone. Every 7-layer dip is also never the same, right? Everyone has their own take on it, somewhat different in the mix. But once you learn what goes into someone's 7-layer dip, you can instantly riff off of it and become a master chef overnight, right? So here goes. Grandma's 7-layer fantastical social media dip for content. The first of the 7 layers is Sunday sermon snippets. This is something every church should have as an available ingredient. Take the manuscript for your Sunday sermons or your notes or your bibliography that you used in your sermon prep and mine them for quotes, factoids, interesting points. Use them as content to sprinkle across all of your social media networks all week long. Let your people marinate on what you preached on Sunday so that they can think about it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc. You want to talk sermon snippets all week long. Second one is Bible building blocks. People love to retweet, regram, share posts that they resonate with. What better source other than God's Word itself? I shared earlier in this presentation that over 80% of millennials have shared Scripture on their social networks in this last year. So why not let them share your church's posts of Bible content? The next one is volunteers are your heroes, right? Volunteer highlights is what we can put out there on a regular basis. This is one of my favorites because it can be just so much fun. Volunteers are the heroes of any church. Without volunteers, you wouldn't be able to do half of the things your ministry has planned. There's two things that you need to think about with your volunteers in general. One is appreciation, and the second one is recognition. Two completely separate things. But for the second, recognition, social media is the perfect medium to help accomplish this. Why not plan a recurring weekly volunteer of the week photo or story that you can post on your networks? Why not post team photos? Catch a volunteer in action and explain why their help is furthering the gospel mission of your church. Let it be little things, big things. Highlight your volunteers. Volunteers are our heroes, and you need to start recognizing them, and social media is a great place to do that. The fourth layer is what we call our ministry merry-go-round. Social media is meant to help share your church's life. This layer of content is great for focusing on the various ministry areas that are a part of your church. So instead of just randomly posting random things in random sequence of priority, take the time to plan out your coverage and exposure for each and every ministry team of your church. You want to give all of them some exposure. You can either take a positive, proactive content creation stance, or you can try this out. Try to schedule a ministry social media takeover for the week or weekend. In a social media takeover, if you've never heard of it before, you simply plan ahead, right? And you give that ministry department permission or access to your Instagram or your Twitter account or your Facebook account. And then you let them post status updates throughout the weekend or the week that really shows off their ministry area. Right? So give them access to your Instagram, your Twitter, or your Facebook account, and let them post status updates that go that really share what they're doing over that period. It's a great way to energize a team and let them show off just how much goes into the details of their ministry. Next layer is, it's Friday, but Sunday's coming. Tony's famous sermon is a prompt for this next layer of delectable, delightful dip, right? I don't know about your church, but for mine, Sunday is the big day. It's also the day to take advantage of church growth, because Sundays, that's the day that your congregation has the opportunity on an ongoing, consistent chance to invite a friend, to invite that teacher in their kid's school, or invite that neighbor. Circle back to a conversation at the water cooler and invite that coworker to your church, right? But it's hard. It's not that easy. You need to recognize that. So why not give your people a talking point, a conversation piece to forward, to share? Let them have something to talk about, a point to make it easier for them to bring it up in conversation. It's way easier for someone to share a Facebook post that talks about a topic of an upcoming sermon about, say, faith and work integration, or that relationship series or sermon that you're going to give, or a guest speaker that's coming to your church. It's much easier than putting the pressure on them to come up with the pitch all by themselves, right? So help your people talking up what's going on this coming Sunday by giving them something on social media that they can use as a talking point. And you want to start that the second half of each week. I promise, it really works when you focus on word of mouth by making it easy to click with the word of mouse. Okay? Word of mouth through the word of mouse. Okay, the next one is, the sixth layer is new visitor vistas. Social media is the perfect thing to share Kodak moments that help prospective visitors see what it will look like when they enter into your doorways, right? Show them what the crowd looks like in the sanctuary. Everyone is wondering, like, do I wear slacks or jeans? Is everyone in there rocking hipster beards and cuffed jeans and V-neck t-shirts, or perhaps a little bit more formal with button-downs and ties for your Sunday best? Are the kids' ministry areas lifeless and run down, or are they like gathering in a vibrant, safe, and clean place? What does your baptism Sunday look like? How do people sing and praise and worship? People want to know what they're going to be walking into. Don't make it a black hole or mystery that leaves it to their creativity. Because if you do, their creativity will fill in the blanks, I'm telling you. And usually those gaps are filled with like horror stories and unflattering thoughts, tapping into the baggage that people might have from experiences with various churches in their past. The concept here is show, don't tell. Don't just say that your church is inviting and a warm place to visit. This is a chance for you to show off the dynamic church life that you have. Okay, the last layer I think is the yummiest one of all so far. It's video. Video is the new black. We're talking testimonial videos. We're talking sermon teaser trailers. Maybe you don't have the luxury of a video editor on staff or a media team. That's okay, because what you can do is go out and use simple, low-fidelity solutions as well, right? How about a simple question of the week video? Take your phone, a small camera. You can ask people a quick question before or after church with your camera, and compile several of them at a time into an easy video clip to share. Or a fun 15-second challenge where you ask people to list as many things as possible in a category with 15 seconds as a time limit. For instance, you can ask on camera, name as many Old Testament books that you can remember. Go. Or name all the places where you've prayed over this last year. Right? They'll come up with lists like in the car, in the bathroom, in the elevator. They'll start thinking and rattling them off. It's a fun way to share in social media. A simple man on the street series where you ask people, what does blank mean to you? For example, if you're doing a series on prayer, go out and ask, what does prayer mean to you? Want to have fun? Why don't you try a Bible or not series of videos with people, right? Basic Bible trivia questions. Oh, there's just so much more you can do creatively with video. All you need to do is go for it. Okay, there you have it. We've got the 7-layer fantastical dip for social media. It's your place to get the party started. You start with the chips and dips as a centerpiece, and then incrementally you can start to add more and more to your content calendar, your social media activities, your messaging strategies. Start small, incrementally grow one step at a time. Now, one of the most common questions I get is, how often should I be publishing to this social media mediums, right? Well, if it really depends on how much it really depends, I think, on how active they are throughout the day, who's on there, how many of your congregation really is using social media. Remember, young adults spend as much as 6 hours or more a day on social. Other demographics are logging in once a day. But in general, I use this count-up framework for frequency. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 for Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, and Twitter, right? So let's just go through it one at a time. First, start with 1 post a day for Instagram, 1 or 2 at the max, right? 1 post a day on Instagram. For Facebook, 2 times a day. General rule is 2 to 3 posts is a good way to do it. So 1 to 2 on Instagram, 2 to 3 on Facebook. For Snapchat, try to take it 3 times a day, 3 to 4 times a day max on Snapchat to start. And then for Twitter, we're talking 4 or more times. That's my 4x4 framework for frequency. 1, 2, 3, 4 times a day on 4 specific networks: Insta, Facebook, Snapchat, Facebook. You don't need to be on all 4, but remember, don't get stuck with paralysis by analysis. Just go out and do it and start small. You don't have to do it all. Begin with 1 platform. If you want to use just 1, start with Facebook and then look for incremental gains. Remember that the version 1 is better than version none. Version 1 is better than version none, so just go get started. So now you have all the elements to pull together a weekly editorial calendar. Using the basics for content and frequency, you can map out your editorial calendar for a week, for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, a month in advance for your church. I hope this was helpful to break down some of the general guides for types of content as well as timing of content. And I wish you the best as you plan your work and then work the plan. That's very important, to be strategic. Plan your work and then work the plan. I'd love to hear how you're doing and any questions that you might have about going to build your own church's editorial content calendar. Remember, today's presentation is available for download at simply.butler.church. And my name is Kenny Jang. I invite you to reach out to me on Twitter at Kenny Jang, or let's get the conversation started across any of the social media networks. And this time, remember, I'll bring the chips if you bring the dip.